Hello students, let us continue our lesson on chapter 9, our environment, our concern. We have studied about ecosystems, food chains and food webs. Then we have studied pyramids, ecological pyramids. And now we will go on to study the effects of human activities on ecosystems. We have the story of Kolleru Lake to understand how human activities alter an ecosystem and the impact of human activities on the environment. Freshwater lakes provide nutritional requirements for the poorest of the poor people. One such lake is the Kolleru Lake, which is a wetland. It is one of the largest freshwater lakes in India, existing between the West Godavari and Krishna districts of the state of Andhra Pradesh. It is 15 kilometers from Eluru. The catchment of the lake extends up to 6,121 kilometers square. This lake discharges excess water into the Bay of Bengal through a twisty channel, which is 65 kilometers long. Kolleru wetland receives huge quantity of nutrient-rich sediments from the floodplains of the West Godavari and the Krishna rivers. In November 1999, the government of Andhra Pradesh declared the lake as a bird sanctuary because this lake hosts 193 species of birds and a variety of flora and fauna, including some medicinal plants. This lake attracts migratory birds from northern Asia and eastern Europe between the months of October and March. The lake is also an important habitat for around 20 million flora and fauna. It is a freshwater lake, but now it has become small in size and is facing threat due to pollution since the last 3 decades. Water area of the lake also has decreased. The lake is now crowded with weeds. There are dense weeds. There are aquaculture ponds now in that area. Rice fields and encroachments have developed in that area. So, being a profitable business, aquaculture in Kolleru started extensively in the 80s and they spread to other areas in the Krishna and Godavari Delta. So many investors have been attracted to that area and the entire lake was brought under cultivation. So because of this, bunds were constructed to keep water out to protect the crops. And this diversion affected natural flow of the lake. The water holding capacity of the lake also decreased. After some time, activities such as agriculture and industries grew in intensity in the catchment area of the lake. So, because of this, the drains and rivulets carry substantial quantity of various types of pollutants into the lake. The major sources of pollution are the agricultural runoff containing residues of several pesticides, fertilizers, fish tank discharges. Then industrial activities have released so many effluents containing chemical residues and different types of organic substances. Those are also going into the lake. Municipal and domestic sewage also is let into the lake. So because of this, there is excessive nutrient addition, especially from man-made activities. Those are called anthropogenic activities. Anthropogenic means man-made activities. So this has led to explosive weed growth. Eichhornia and Pistia are some examples of the weeds that are growing in the lake. So as a result of this, water in the lake has turned more alkaline, turbid, nutrient rich, and now the oxygen demand has also increased. It is now high in biological oxygen demand. What is biological oxygen demand? It is the amount of oxygen consumed by bacteria and other microorganisms while they decompose the organic matter. High BOD is because of high organic pollution. The dissolved oxygen levels have decreased. What is dissolved oxygen? It is the measure of how much oxygen is dissolved in water. That is, the amount of oxygen available to living aquatic organisms. It can tell us about the water quality. This dissolved oxygen is breathed by fish and zooplanktons and is needed for their survival. So, if dissolved oxygen is low, the aquatic organisms will not be able to survive. Apart from this, waterborne diseases like diarrhea, typhoid, amoebiasis, and other diseases have become common among the local inhabitants who are unaware of the pollution in the lake water. Vector-borne diseases have also increased. Even the prawn and the fish have been found to be affected by the diseases, leading to some of the farms getting abandoned or being left like that. The lands which are abandoned, they are now useless for agriculture also. If you can observe the table, you can see that aquaculture practices have an influence on the migratory birds, and the migratory birds have decreased. Aquaculture practices have also had an impact on the population loss of the flora and fauna. Then please look at the pathogens. Human activities have had an influence on the pathogens and they have also increased. Next, agricultural practices, aquaculture practices, and human activities have led to eutrophication. What is eutrophication? It is the increase in nutrients and minerals in a water body because of which there is excess algal growth, and this algal growth causes a problem to the water body. Next, there is also toxic contamination because of agricultural, aquacultural, and industrial practices. So, there is also siltation and flooding. The Ministry of the Environment and Forests, Government of India, constituted a committee called Operation Kolleru to protect the lake. The objective of the program is to bring back the ecological balance of Kolleru Lake, which is a gift of nature. When a forest is cut down and a food crop is grown in its place, it is called monoculture. In this case, a natural established ecosystem with a number of species in equilibrium is replaced by a single unnatural concentration of a single crop. So when we grow crops in large concentrations, we get food in abundant quantities. So this situation will be also optimum for pests, parasites like fungi to grow on the food material. So if food quantity is larger, then the multiplication of pests and parasites is also rapid and the damage also will be great. To avoid such damages, the crops are protected by using toxic chemicals, and these chemicals are what we call pesticides, herbicides and fungicides. They are actually very effective, but the use has created many problems. A perfect pesticide is one which destroys a particular pest and it is harmless to every other form of life. So no such pesticide actually exists. Most often pesticides are indiscriminate in their action, that is, they are destroying other animals, some of which may be natural predators which feed on these pests. So this will cause unpredictable change in the food chain and it will disturb the balance within the ecosystem. Most of the pesticides are non-degradable. Example, mercury, arsenic, lead. So these are potentially dangerous as they accumulate in the bodies of animals and they pass right through the food web. The process of entry of pollutants into a food chain is called bioaccumulation, where the concentration of these pollutants are increasing in the organism. This is bioaccumulation. So when these pollutants move from one trophic level to the next trophic level, it is called biomagnification. Let us study about the seasonal bioaccumulation of heavy metals in fish of the Edulabad water reservoir. Water reservoirs and rivers which are surrounding urban areas, they pose a risk for survival of aquatic organisms because water quality gets deteriorated because of excessive nutrient inputs like heavy metal accumulation, organic pollution and acidification. The aquatic life gets contaminated with heavy metals due to industrialization and man made activities. Fish are considered to be the bioindicators of metal contamination. This is observable because fish respond strongly to stress conditions. A study was conducted in the Edulabad water reservoir. The quantity of heavy metals such as lead, cadmium, chromium, manganese, nickel, and ferrous was assessed. Cyprinus carpio, a common scale carp, is a highly proteinaceous fish. It is used as food by human beings. This fish was taken for the study. The heavy metal quantities in the water samples were assessed, and the heavy metals or the bioaccumulation in various tissues like liver, kidney, and the gills of the fish growing in the reservoir was analyzed. The glycogen and lipid content also was analyzed. Water and fish samples were collected in 3 different seasons: in the pre-monsoon season, monsoon season, and post-monsoon season each year. The 3 water samples were collected in different stations or different places, and they were taken in cleaned polythene bottles, tightly capped, and they were used for analysis. The metal concentrations were found in the following concentrations, with iron in the highest quantity, followed by lead, chromium, nickel, and cadmium. The metal in the fish or the bioaccumulation of these metals in the fish tissues were of the following trend: cadmium of the highest concentration, chromium, iron, nickel, followed by lead. So, cadmium concentrations were found the highest in the liver, gill, and kidney of these fish, even when the concentrations of these metals in the water was low. One more point noted in this analysis is that bioaccumulation was less in the monsoon season than the pre and the post monsoon seasons. These heavy metals find their way into human beings through food chain, and they cause various disorders like hypertension, sporadic fever, renal damage, nausea, etc. It has been thus concluded that unplanned urban settlements combined with unorganized small scale industries and sewage led to the contamination of the Edulabad reservoir. Let us look at a small story of the sparrow campaign. This disaster took place of the Chinese sparrows in 1958. This environmental crisis was not a natural one, but it was a man-made one. It took place in China, and all sparrows were hunted down, never before like in the history of the world. Sparrows were accused of eating excess grain. There were fewer crops harvested. The amount of grain did not meet the quotas of the people. So therefore, labor force was mobilized by the government as an anti-sparrow army. People started trapping, poisoning, and killing sparrows in large numbers. People would also beat drums to scare the birds away from landing so that the sparrows were forced to keep flying till they dropped dead because of fatigue. Sparrow nests were torn down, eggs were broken, and the little birds were killed. Later, some scientists who studied the digestive system of these dead sparrows found that the contents of the digestive system contained more insects rather than the grains. And these insects were actually harmful to the crops. So the sparrows were actually eating away the insects which were harmful to the crops, and thus they were actually protecting the crops. So later, scientific findings showed that sparrows were basically a beneficial bird for human beings. After this campaign, crop yields actually decreased instead of increasing. The effect of this sparrow campaign led to increase in locust population, and there were no sparrows to eat the locusts. The locusts, along with bad weather, led to Great Chinese Famine. They used pesticides against locust population, but this only degraded the land. So this sparrow campaign is an eventful incident in the history of Chinese agriculture. So let us see what are the steps towards prevention. and conservation. Some important methods can be used. Rotation of crops. Growing different crops on a particular piece of land in successive years will reduce the occurrence of pests and will also reduce damage to crops from year to year. We can also study the life history of pest so that we can understand when to sow the crops and when least damage will be occurred. We can also take biological control of the pest, like introducing a natural predator or a parasite of the pest. We can also render the males of a pest sterile so that they don't multiply. New strains can be developed which will be resistant to the pest, and these have also been developed. Then we can also follow environmental ethics that is concerned with morality of human activities, like showing regard to the environment and not polluting the environment.